What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law. Will you flout it all to do as you please?
Alicent!
She did not say that in anger. She said it in relief. Alicent Hightower had been holding that sentence inside her body for years, and the moment it finally left her mouth, dagger in hand, blood already on her arm, the expression on her face was not rage. A woman putting down something too heavy to carry looks exactly like that. The question no one has asked is what she was confessing to. To calculate the atmospheric pressure of this hall in Driftmark, we must understand what each person in this room needs, and what it costs them not to have it. Alicent has spent the better part of a decade performing a role she did not choose. She was placed beside Viserys, not as a partner, but as a structural piece. The Lord Hand's instrument, wrapped in silk, positioned at the throne's right side to ensure the Hightower line of influence stayed warm. She produced heirs. She managed the court. She held the institution together on nights when the king could not hold himself together. And tonight, her son Aemond has lost an eye in a brawl that started with a question about his blood. She comes to this hall expecting the office of king to respond with the weight his office carries. What she finds instead is Viserys offering words. Reconciliation. A king asking his family to perform forgiveness. Rhaenyra stands across from her, unbowed, her sons unnamed and unindicted. Alicent needs justice to be visible. Not for Aemond, for herself. Because if the institution she has sacrificed everything to uphold refuses to uphold her, then what exactly has she been guarding all this time?
My sons are in line to inherit the Iron Throne, Your Grace. This is the highest of treasons.
She opens with law, not grief. The word she reaches for is treasons, a legal category, a political charge. Her son is bleeding somewhere in the castle and she leads with the Iron Throne. Alicent has been trained, through a decade of queenship, to convert feeling into form before it reaches her face. The moment pain arrives, she routes it through the only channel she was ever given, institutional language. The grief exists. She simply does not know how to present it without a legal vehicle underneath it. So she wraps it in precedent and brings it to court. Emotional suppression. Through institutional displacement. The psychological process by which a person routes unacceptable private feeling, grief, rage, longing, through a formal role or institution, converting the raw emotion into a socially legible demand that can be acted upon without requiring vulnerability. Every wound Alicent receives becomes a petition. Every injustice becomes a legal argument. She has learned, through years of conditioning at the Queen's right hand, that raw feeling is a liability, dangerous to her position, lethal to the perception of control she must project to maintain influence. So she processes privately and presents publicly, always arriving composed, always arriving with cause. Tonight, that internal system is about to exceed its load.
That is insufficient. Aemond has been damaged permanently, my king. Goodwill cannot make him whole.
The restraint in that single word, insufficient, is enormous. It belongs to contracts and councils, not to a mother watching her child pay a price that cannot be recovered. But Alicent is still gripping the role with both hands here. She is still translating. She has moved from law to economics. She is pricing the wound because pricing it is the only mechanism she has for making it legible to people who will not simply feel it with her. Viserys has spent his entire reign in the luxury of sentiment. Alicent was never extended that privilege. She learned early that sentiment without institutional power is just noise that dissipates into the stone walls.
There is a debt to be paid. I shall have one of her son's eyes in return. He can choose which eye to keep, a privilege he did not grant my son.
The court goes silent. The demand is monstrous, and yet it is delivered with complete composure. Alicent chooses symmetry over mercy. One eye, measured, calibrated, judicial. She has watched Rhaenyra operate outside consequence for so long that she has concluded consequence must be forced, mathematically, visibly, without room for interpretation. The composure in this moment is the most disturbing part. That terrifying calm is what a decade of suppressed resentment looks like when it finally finds a legal vehicle. And the vehicle holds. Legitimized aggression. The channeling of private hostility through an authority structure, a legal code, a royal command, an institutional precedent. In a way that makes the aggression appear righteous rather than personal. Alicent has operated at this level politically for years. This is the first time the mechanism becomes visible to the room, because the aggression is now pointed at a specific child rather than encoded in procedure. Everyone can suddenly see the private fury underneath the legal argument. The institution is no longer concealing her.
The king will not seek justice, the queen will.
It is framing her. 7 words. The most structurally dangerous sentence she has spoken since arriving at court. She is not asking. She is not petitioning. She is announcing a separate source of authority. One that does not require Viserys' consent. If the king will not is a conditional that positions the king as having failed a standard she is setting. She has placed herself, in this sentence, above the man she was installed to serve. Every queen in Westeros understands that particular line exists and must never be crossed aloud. Alicent crosses it, which means the suppression is already failing. The institutional scaffolding has begun carrying more weight than it was designed to hold, and scaffolding that overloads does not bend gradually.
Alicent, stay with the king!
She does not bring a weapon. She takes one, from her husband, from the king. The staging is not accidental. Alicent has wielded no instrument of her own for the duration of this marriage. Every form of power she exercised, access, influence, political leverage, was borrowed from the office Viserys granted her. The dagger is the physical extension of that dependency. She reaches for his authority because she has never been permitted to carry her own. And in the moment she grabs it and turns toward Rhaenyra, the choice being made is not violence. It is agency, in the only form the room has left available. Agency. Collapse into somatic discharge. The psychological breaking point at which the internal regulatory system, the habits, roles, and performances that contain suppressed emotion, can no longer process the incoming load, and the body acts before the mind can redirect it into socially acceptable form. The action is targeted, not random. Alicent moves toward Rhaenyra specifically, past Viserys, who dismissed her, past Criston Cole, who hesitated. She goes to the woman whose freedom has been the precise measure of her own captivity. The body in these moments does not lie. It moves toward where the wound actually lives.
Oh! What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law. Will you flout it all to do as you please?
Alicent!
She has stopped talking about Aemon's eye. The full account is arriving now. The unspoken ledger of everything she has given that was never acknowledged, never reciprocated, never registered. What have I done but what was expected of me is not a defense. It is an indictment of the expectation itself. She is finally saying aloud what she could not allow herself to think with clarity. Being expected to sacrifice is not the same as choosing it. The role was presented as the gift. The gift had a price no one named at the time of giving.
Where is duty? Where is sacrifice? It's trampled under your pretty foot again.
Rhaenyra, who rejected the role, bent every rule, produced heirs of contested blood, and suffered no permanent consequence, became the mirror that showed Alicent everything she had surrendered. Every year of measured compliance, every swallowed objection, every feeling converted into institutional language. The mirror reflected all of it back in the form of Rhaenyra's unbound life. Proximity to that reflection, sustained over 2 decades, has a specific psychological name: unconscious comparative resentment. The long-term psychological corrosion that occurs when a person measuring their own sacrifice against another's apparent freedom concludes, correctly or not, that the distribution of cost has been fundamentally unjust. This mechanism requires nothing deliberate from Rhaenyra. A mirror does not need to intend the reflection. Alicent was installed into structured sacrifice at the same moment Rhaenyra was living the alternative. Unbound, indulged, the king's beloved exception. In Alicent's internal accounting, Every freedom Rhaenyra enjoyed was purchased at Alicent's expense. Whether that accounting was accurate is not the point. The Dagger does not pause to audit the ledger.
Exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness. But now they see you as you are.
Rhaenyra lands this precisely because she is correct. But the naming of a mask after it comes off is not empathy. The entire structure of Alicent's power has rested on the perception of righteous suffering. Patient queen, loyal wife, wronged mother. The court extended her enormous latitude because her suffering appeared noble. The Dagger removes that perception in a single motion. But now they see you as you are as a strategic execution dressed as an observation. Rhaenyra has watched Alicent operate for 20 years. She knows what just happened, and she knows the thing that will hurt more than the wound. Being seen without the role that made the wound bearable. But here is what the show never told you. In Fire and Blood, Alicent Hightower is openly, strategically ambitious. A woman who understood political power on its own terms and pursued it without the pretense of reluctant duty. George R.R. Martin's source material depicts her gathering allies, building factions, and making her intentions legible to the court without needing a mask of sacrifice. The show's Alicent, the woman who claims to want nothing for herself, who frames every move as obligation, is an invention of the adaptation. Which means the show has created something psychologically stranger than the source. A woman who buried the ambition so completely, she stopped being able to distinguish it from sacrifice. By the time of the Dagger, she may not know which one she is defending. The wound and the ambition have fused. The fusion is the danger, not the blade. The person who converts every private feeling into institutional performance does not become neutral. They become pressurized. In every large organization, the same profile exists. The colleague who has never complained, never asked for anything, never bent a single rule, who one day sends an email that ends careers. The rupture surprises everyone. The warning signs were present the entire time. They sounded like perfect compliance. They looked like unfailing professionalism. The ceiling was always there. No one looked up long enough to see how close it had come. Alicent never wanted to be dangerous. She wanted to be sufficient. Sufficient to the role, to the expectation, to the version of herself that required no one to ask how she actually felt. The Dagger was not the failure of that project. It was its logical endpoint. A performance sustained long enough stops being performed. It starts performing the performer. And by the time Rhaenyra tells her the court finally sees her as she is, Alicent has already lost the only thing that made the sacrifice bearable. The belief that she had chosen it freely. Here is the question this scene leaves unanswered. If Viserys had backed Alicent fully in that hall, publicly, with real consequences for Rhaenyra's sons, would the Dagger have ever come out? Or had the resentment already grown past the point where any single act of justice could have drained it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next.